You were taught that money is created by governments, controlled by central banks, and managed in the public interest. But what if that story is incomplete, carefully simplified, and missing the most important actors of all? What if the real power behind money creation operates quietly, legally, and invisibly shaping economies, wars, booms, and crashes without ever appearing on a ballot or a history textbook page? Because the mystery we begin with today is simple but unsettling. If governments are always short of money, why can trillions appear overnight during crises? And who truly decides when that happens? To answer that, we have to rewind centuries, back before central banks, before paper currency, to a time when money was gold and silver, scarce by nature, and power was limited by physical supply. Yet even then, early bankers discovered something revolutionary, that they could lend more claims to gold than they actually possessed. Because most people never demanded their metal at the same time. And this practice, fractional reserve banking, didn't begin as a conspiracy but as an innovation, quietly multiplying money through trust and accounting rather than minting, until governments noticed that those who controlled credit controlled growth, wars, and survival, leading to pivotal moments like the creation of the Bank of England in 1694, where private financiers loaned money to a cash-strapped crown in exchange for monopoly privileges, setting a pattern that would repeat across nations: governments borrowing, bankers issuing, and debt becoming the foundation of money itself. As the centuries progressed, this system expanded, formalized, and centralized, especially during crises, because wars are expensive and taxes are slow, but borrowing is immediate. And so central banks emerged, not merely as public institutions but as hybrid creatures, part state, part private, always positioned between political power and financial power, culminating in the early 20th century, with the creation of the U.S. Federal Reserve, often misunderstood as a government agency, but structurally designed to be independent, insulated from voters, and operated through a network of private banks. And here is where the cause and effect accelerates, because once money became debt issued by banks rather than a commodity extracted from the ground, the supply could expand infinitely as long as someone was willing to borrow, fueling industrial growth, consumerism, and global trade, but also embedding fragility into the system, since every dollar created required interest to be repaid, even though the interest itself was never created, guaranteeing perpetual expansion or eventual collapse. The rise phase of this story is seductive: credit builds cities, innovation explodes, living standards rise, and economists celebrate stability, yet beneath the surface leverage grows. Risk concentrates, and financial institutions become too big to fail, because their collapse would destroy the money supply itself. And the breaking point inevitably arrives when debts outpace real economic output, which we saw dramatically in when a credit-fueled stock market collapsed, triggering bank runs and the Great Depression, forcing governments to intervene, not to save people first, but to save the system of money creation itself, leading to failed fixes like the gold standards, abandonment, temporary reforms, and new promises of regulation that slowed excess but never reversed the core mechanism. Then history repeats with greater scale posts. World War II, Reconstruction, expands debt. The Bretton Woods system pegs currencies to the dollar to gold, until in 1971 even that last anchor is removed, unleashing pure fiat money backed only by confidence and enforcement. And from that moment on, money creation accelerates exponentially, with each crisis justifying more intervention, more liquidity, and more consolidation of power into central banks and financial institutions, culminating in 2008 when a housing bubble built on cheap credit imploded, revealing that banks had created vast amounts of money through loans that could never be repaid. Yet, instead of collapse, we witnessed something unprecedented: trillions created digitally to bail out the system, proving that money was never scarce, only selectively distributed. The fallout of this invisible hand is profound, because while asset prices recover and even soar, wages stagnate, inequality widens, and the cost of living rises, as newly created money flows first into financial markets rather than the real economy, enriching those closest to the source. A pattern confirmed by modern data showing that since 2008, global debt has surpassed $300 trillion, while central bank balance sheets have multiplied several times over, and the same playbook repeats during the pandemic, where lockdowns freeze economies yet markets surge, again revealing that money creation responds not to human need directly, but to systemic preservation. Attempts to fix this through regulation, transparency, or alternative theories fail because they treat symptoms rather than structure. Ignoring that money today is not a neutral tool, but a lever of power, one that shapes political decisions, foreign policy, and social stability. And when we connect this story to the present, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Rising interest rates, triggering stress, governments burdened by debt they can never fully repay, calls for central bank independence even as their decisions affect billions, and emerging technologies like digital currencies promising reform while potentially increasing control rather than freedom. So what are the takeaways from this long, hidden story? First, money is not merely a medium of exchange, but a system of incentives and power. and understanding who creates it explains who benefits from it. Second, crises are not anomalies but pressure points where the invisible hand becomes visible, revealing priorities and structural truths. And third, without public understanding, reform is impossible, because a system that remains invisible remains unquestioned. And the warning is this: when money creation is divorced from democratic oversight yet central to daily survival, instability is not a risk but a feature, leaving us with an open-ended thought worth sitting with. If the rules of money shape the future more than elections, should they remain invisible at all? And if this video challenged what you thought you knew, consider subscribing, sharing it with someone who still believes money is simple, and staying curious, because the most powerful forces in history rarely announce themselves. They operate quietly, until the consequences become impossible to ignore.